it feels like we definitely had like the most authentic conversation, but at the same time that has brought about the most horrendous and poorly articulated takes from both of us.
Yeah, well, no, that's what I said. I was saying, like, if death is the ultimate human condition, and Subaru doesn't know death, is Subaru evil?
I don't think you can say that anymore.
Do you think Gen 10 in Pokemon is going to introduce the Western type?
All right, hello everyone. We're finally doing ReZero 3. I shouldn't say finally because there was way more time between ReZero 1 and ReZero 2.
Yeah, we've actually been doing all right. I mean, there was like a month between Spy and that end of year video.
Yeah, and we got distracted with Tweed last on.
We got distracted with finals in college, actually, but
That also happened, but was it? When was that? Was that like during ReZero 2?
yes, that was the reason why we could not get ReZero recorded was because I was an hour ahead of you, and so every time that you were free, I was like, my brother in Christ, it is
Okay, yeah.
1 a.m. So we did like one episode every 3 days.
Okay, so we watched the first half of season 2 now, up to episode 13, and we've also watched the Emilia movie. You said something. So you said something while we were watching that about how Emilia has the same issue as Subaru.
Yes, I remember.
I don't remember what you said though.
I think I can find it. In this chat is everyone please make duo for the 37 votes Lowen Bobert needs to win her Colorado district.
well, we made duo, so chat.
Oh, here we go. It's almost like Emilia has a similar character flaw to Subaru. Oh,
yeah,
and
what was the character flaw?
She won't just like stop. I'll read the exact line. My point isn't that deep. They have different motivations. They both won't just shut the fuck up, though.
Yeah. So you pointed out that they both really want to put themselves into things, and I never thought about this before, but it's very true, and it's for completely different reasons though, which is what I realized while we were watching the movie, and that's that. We were talking about in our past 2 episodes that Subaru puts himself into everything because he thinks he's the isekai protagonist, and he feels the need to put himself into things and to take responsibility for things because he feels like he wants to be the protagonist and he wants to be a part of the story that's happening, even though, as you said, he was kind of derailing the story instead of helping it along. Whereas on Emilia's side, she takes responsibility for everything because she actually feels responsible, even when she isn't, which is kind of the opposite of Subaru. We see that in the beginning of season 2, just an inkling of it, where she really wants to complete the trials, even though she's failing, and Subaru has been succeeding at the trials. She feels this need to complete them. She feels this need to do something useful because she feels sort of responsible for the whole situation on a personal level, whereas Subaru feels the need to do it to complete these trials because he wants the story to move along. And I think that's interesting how we see this dichotomy that you mentioned during the movie. We see this dichotomy play out in the beginning of season 2, and then we'll see it much more towards the later half.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's funny because that's sort of like, that's what I'm telling myself is the reason why Emilia likes Subaru, is because he may be annoying and cringe and throw himself into things too much, but she is someone who has had responsibility thrust upon her from conception, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And Subaru is someone who could have literally just lived his life as a servant. Like, remember how like how season 1 starts, where they're just like, hey, why don't you just like shine silverware and in return live in Roswell's castle? But like, Subaru wouldn't let himself just be that. And I think sort of when Emilia might start to feel bogged down with her responsibilities in like, where she keeps failing the trial over and over again, looking to Subaru is almost like a symbol of, sometimes it is good to shoulder responsibility. It is good to bite off more than you can chew. It is good to persevere, because that's something that maybe you can forget if you have had responsibility forced onto you sort of without your consent for so long, like Emilia has. But we don't want to talk about Emilia, do we?
So we'll talk more about Emilia next time, because that's when Emilia... the thing I was going to say... I'm not sure there's a real reason for Emilia liking Subaru. I think she just kind of likes everyone, And in the same sense, that she feels personally responsible for everything that happens around her. She also feels personally responsible for the people around her, particularly in Subaru's case, because she kind of, like, in the timeline that worked out, she kind of dragged him into the whole scenario and forced him to do heroic acts that we shouldn't reasonably expect him to do.
No,
and
I mean,
she feels personally responsible, and that's like I think the fact she likes him is kind of just part of her liking everyone.
Well, yeah, well, and I was gonna say, I think also it's also the reason why she likes him is, and the reason why I said that was because, really, I think the biggest reason is because of like the meta isekai. She is the isekai, princess in the castle,
Right.
and so Subaru has to get the girl. But I always will find that a little cringe, and I know you're supposed to, and I think very often ReZero explicitly says you're supposed to. So I said that because I think at the beginning I said, this is how I rationalize it to myself. But
Well,
like,
what do you think of the fact that he hasn't gotten her yet?
Well, I mean, because he hasn't won yet.
But what do you think of the fact that so far there's no concrete indication of how Subaru is going to like get her?
Well, because there's no concrete indication of how he's going to get out of this. I mean, the getting of the girl will always be intrinsically tied in these types of stories to the resolution of the conflict. There are some where the love is formed in the conflict, sort of like in one of the darker moments of the characters. That'd be if Emilia was like more like Subaru's partner in crime and less like the female goal at the end of the rainbow. So I don't. And you asked this question, so I'm going to turn it around to you and say, what does it say to you? But to me, at least, it doesn't really say that much. I mean, what does it say? Well, Subaru's not done, so why would he get the girl? And it seems like there's no avenue to them being together. Well, there's no avenue to him winning yet. He's still kind of fumbling around. I can tell he's on the cusp of sort of making a breakthrough in terms of like being able to really make some money moves, to quote Cardi B. But he's not there yet, and so his future with Emilia isn't there yet. But
Right.
what does it mean to you?
I think it's exactly right. I think that it is definitely obvious that something is gonna that the relationship is having their fates tied together like this with the trials. It's obvious that in some way this conflict is going to be tied to the development of the relationship. That somehow the only way that they're going to get out of this is by changing how they view each other. And so I think you're definitely right that it's simply that Subaru hasn't really done anything concrete in their relationship to change things in the direction of getting the girl. He gets, like everything in the show, he gets exactly what he deserves. You get what you pay for.
God's never late, but he's always on time.
I don't know what that means, but it's very true.
It's you just made me think, and this isn't something that just occurred to me, but I'm thinking about it again in this context of what is it like when you have a relationship, not just a romantic relationship, any relationship, where one side has seen like 50 different ways in which a relationship plays out and the other person doesn't. And that, I mean, we're not in the timeline where Subaru and Emilia went on their date, but I'm sure Subaru still cherishes that memory. Mm-hmm. It is an interesting sort of concept that I feel like once we get a little bit out of Subaru's head and more into him with Emilia and him with other characters, and we already kind of seen it with Otto, we're going to kind of see it some more. That's why I think, and I'm not sure if we were going to talk about Otto today, but that's why I thought that Otto's declaration of friendship was so important, because up until this moment, Subaru has been the all-knowing person who seeks out the friend. Otto was really the first person who initiates the friendship, and you see Subaru rebuke him at first, maybe because he thinks that friendships are temporary because we're all just going to die anyway. But
I think he's edgy and thinks friendships are dumb.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but,
he had no friends growing up,
But why does he think friendships are dumb? Because like no one's done that to him.
Right.
Can you? I can't think of a single character who initiated a friendship with Subaru. Maybe like Felix, but even then, that was just because Felix is weird.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you mean by friendship.
Or initiate the relationship.
because there is one example, which is Echidna. Echidna has certainly initiated some kind of relationship with him.
Human then, because Echidna also has that omniscience, knows about return by death and all that shit.
But no. I think Echidna and Otto's relationships with Subaru are actually kind of very similar in a way, in the sense that Otto becomes friends with Subaru, and what that means concretely is that Subaru finds someone that he can actually trust in and actually like entrust tasks to, and trust with information, and count on to appear at convenient times to help out. And with Echidna, it's abstractly the same thing. I mean, Echidna's offering to be there at convenient times, in particular to shoulder all of his burdens and take it and listen to all of his concerns. In particular, they're both an escape from loneliness, and we'll talk about this in a moment. I think they're very similar, but also, they're thematically opposite, because of course Otto's friendship is genuine. He just genuinely wants to be a friend, and Echidna's friendship is exploitative. She is in it for the ulterior and completely incomprehensible motive of just pure greed of knowledge.
I can tell you tiptoeing around one of the things that we wanted to talk about, which was the nature.
So tell you about like all these questions right now.
Yeah. So just before we jumped in there though, I just wanted to wrap up why I went on this point about Subaru's that no one who is affected by return by death sort of initiates contact with Subaru.
What do you mean by that?
Well, he seeks out like he bumps into Emilia and chases after her. He tries to make inroads with Remenbaum and says, "Oh, that's probably a good idea." He tries to get Emilia to go on a date with him. He tries to convince or get on Roswell's good side. He tries to convince the royal court that he is actually Emilia's knight. He tries to convince Julius to back off. He tries to, get in with Krush to try and get what he wants. He tries to, no one comes to Subaru initially. And the effect of this is that, when Subaru dies, he sort of has these memories and these preconceived notions about people that other people don't have about him. And so he has shut himself in to this wall where he doesn't really think that, friends are real, or that their memories are real, or that they're people. They're more like, they're pawns, they're objectives. Yeah. Otto at this point is reminding Subaru, and he's reminded much more forcefully when he is given the flashbacks of the worlds after where he's died, that every world is full and alive and full of real people, and that those real people can care about him organically, not because of sort of a chess match that he's playing with fate.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was why I thought that that Otto's whole friendship proposition to Subaru was of chief importance. Shout out Patrick Mahomes.
I was just thinking we can literally springboard off that into any of these questions. So
well then, springboard, my brother.
So
go now, Solid Snake.
You brought up these other worlds that he was shown in the trial, which may or may not be real. We don't actually know.
Aren't they all based off of previous deaths that he's had?
They are, but we don't know if they're real or not.
Okay, well,
it could just be visions. I mean, Echidna said that she doesn't know herself. So
I feel that's a cop out. They're real.
I think it was in our second rezero episode that you asked a question, which was, what does Subaru see in the world that was worth saving? And I gave a cheesy answer that he just wants to see Emilia smile. But you also asked this other question, which I said we would answer in season 2, which is, what does the world see in Subaru that is worth saving? And I think now we can start to answer that question. Part of it is definitely just the relationships that he's built with these characters. As you can see in all of these alternate worlds past his deaths, they're filled with people who genuinely cared about him because he did things to make them care about him. And they're part of these worlds that he's been leaving behind, and it's worth saving. The world thinks that it's worth saving Subaru because of course they do, because look at all these characters that have loved him and feel betrayed by him leaving them behind. So I think that's one we can answer. What are you thinking about that?
I disagree, because it seems like and now the world doesn't say this. The witches say this very explicitly, that like the destiny is Subaru, and they sort of implicitly say that, you know, the more people you try and save, let's assume that this is that Subaru. I said chess match before. Let's assume that Subaru's life is a chess match, where he has to, you know, just win the game. Well, he keeps putting arbitrary restrictions. I have to save this rook. I have to save this pawn. I have to castle kingside, not queenside. And each of those restrictions reduces the, you know, number of viable combinations of moves that results in a win. Just to take a purely analytical approach to, you know, to Subaru's life.
Right.
They say, hey, all that is guaranteed is your fate. The more of these people that you try and save and things that you try and accomplish, those might not be what the universe wants, and so that's going to make your life harder. That's, you know, it's going to be harder to find the outcome that will save both Rem and Ram. You know, something like that. And so by saying it that boldly, granted, that's not the world saying it, but I think in that moment the story is having the witches say that as speaking for, you know, the powers that be, the meta world of ReZero, is saying that no, the world doesn't care about those people. The world. So
you think it's
the world's
sort of
aims are unknown.
I think it's sort of a solipsist thing that
Yeah.
the value is in Subaru because Subaru is the only one that truly matters, because, you know, all the other things are just things that Subaru has put value into arbitrarily.
But that's why Subaru's friendships are so important. And I don't want to derail us here, but yes, this world is solipsist in as much as it relates to Subaru, in that it seems to only care about him. The world, rather than, I think, rewarding him for making these friendships and relationships, is actively discouraging him from doing it. So every time that he forms a genuine friendship, a genuine relationship, he is flying in the face, almost, of the world. Maybe not because the destiny doesn't have him becoming friends with Rem, but because that's not what this world was created for.
So, you know, Echidna does take that position, basically. She does say that she would lead Subaru to the optimal future, but that people would die along the way and he would have to suck that up if he joined her. But how would you square that against the fact that there is sort of a meta destiny in the Tome of Wisdom, which predicts the optimal future, and which Rosewall seems to have access to? Now, we don't know what is actually written in Tome of Wisdom, but Rosewall keeps sending Subaru back until seemingly until that he's gonna, you know, take the actions that match that optimal future. And so, if that optimal, you know, there is an optimal future that Rosewall seems to see, and how do you square that against the fact that
I'm not sure he's seeing it. So I did want to ask one question. The Tome of Wisdom he has is different from the Tome of Wisdom Beatrice has, correct?
seemingly,
Well, because what I was going to say was,
because Beatrice is not functional anymore.
well, that's the point.
Right.
We have established that adherence to the Tome of Wisdom will lead you to literally reading a blank book every day. Roswell says, I'm insane. So who are we to imagine that Roswell's book is infallible? I mean, if he's saying, I've gone insane and these tomes of wisdom are fickle, what, you know, I don't think that he's reading an empty book like Beatrice is, but, you know, who's to say that he's not, that what he sees has any basis in reality when he himself says, bro, I'm like cap crazy. Not cap crazy.
So you think these conceptions of like optimal destiny are just like silly nonsense?
No, I think that the world does have a sort of optimal destiny, but I don't think that anyone has it. I
think your thesis is that the optimal destiny is in Subaru's heart.
No, actually, my thesis is that the optimal destiny is absurdism. I think that there is a way that things will work out, but the world is so chaotic in ReZero that all of the characters have convinced themselves that there must be a grander plan, but there actually isn't one.
But
and I really don't have enough evidence to support that, so don't press me on this because I will cry. But it honestly feels like, you know how when they talk about like ancient religions and they say that like the reason why the Mesopotamian gods were angrier than the and the Egyptian gods were very stable is because the Mesopotamian climate flooded all the time and the Egyptian climate flooded regularly,
Yeah.
like with consistency.
Yeah, yeah.
It almost feels like that, where everyone's sort of belief systems are so wild and chaotic and hinging on the fact that there must be some convoluted path for things to work because the world is so goddamn chaotic. So that's kind of my thesis right now, as sort of my interpretation of just how people are acting. I don't really have like plot evidence to support that. That's just kind of my funny little thought.
We came to this conclusion at the end of ReZero 2, which was that the reason Subaru kept going was because he figured out to place all the value in what he wants, and to what exactly do we say? It was something along the lines of he found he found the reason to keep going, and it was just whatever he decided. That meaning was entirely constructed by him. And so I feel like what we're saying right now kind of runs counter to that. You're saying that there is none at all.
How so?
Well, you've said that you've been critical of the fact that characters keep trying to enforce their orderly ideologies onto this chaotic world, and you think that any attempts to put value in this chaos are just futile.
Oh no, I don't think it's critical. I'm sorry, I'm not being critical of it. I'm saying it makes a lot of sense that all of these interpretations have sprung up. That everyone has sort of their tome of wisdom, and that Echidna says, "I will guide you to the." Everyone has a different philosophy, which has sort of led to the belief that there is an optimal path. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying, what does it tell us that multiple separate entities? Now, granted, I would say unrelated entities, but Roswell knows Echidna, he said. So maybe he got this from her, actually, but I'm going to pretend that he didn't, that he came to this conclusion by himself, that there is like an optimal path. Mm-hmm. What does it say about the world that all roads seem to lead to Rome in that sense? And so that's why I'm saying I think it's sort of a reaction to how chaotic the world is. And if you want to say that it's solipsist and that the world really only cares about Subaru, you can say then that would make the world for other people random chaos, and this is their attempt to bring order to that random chaos. I don't think it's futile. I think it's just it's sort of an interesting evolution.
That is very true. The other thing that we don't have like pretty much any information on this, but the other thing that just from a plot perspective that is saving Subaru is Satella. Mm-hmm. We don't understand anything about who Satella is or what her motivations are really, other than that she loves Subaru for some reason. Mm-hmm. And I forget, did she say something like Subaru saved her or something? I don't remember. She either said something like that or will say something like that. It's a really minor thing, so I don't mind like talking a little bit ahead. There's some implication that Subaru somehow in the past or future did something good for her. And of course she said, what I do remember her saying is, eventually you'll have to kill me. And Subaru said, no, I'm definitely going to save you. And so, there's some, I mean, we can speculate. There's some time travel fuckery going on here that we have absolutely no idea about. And of course, there's the question of Satella's connection to Emilia. But we have to take into account the fact that Satella finds Subaru worth saving somehow intrinsically. Maybe that agrees with your solipsist take. There's just one person who matters, and that's it. That's just how it is.
Well, I mean, I think it's certainly interesting that the person who decided that is the Witch of Envy.
It is interesting. I mean, yeah, we can speculate about this all day.
I mean, it just always reminds me of that, like, I am being kept alive out of pure spite.
Yeah, I mean that might be it, to be honest.
or that meme that's like a man literally too angry to die.
Yeah, I thought it was a very interesting move. Talking about the witches as if they were these distant and extremely powerful beings for all of season 1. And then
meanwhile they're just a harem.
Just saying "F it" and plopping Subaru down, not only in front of all the witches, but also in front of Satella herself, and letting Satella speak to him. I thought that was really fascinating, and the way that ReZero still manages to conceal so much information about who the witches are and what their actual motivations are, particularly Satella. Like we still, despite talking to her, have just absolutely no idea what's going on there. I just think it's a very interesting move. I was wondering what you thought about that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's funny because at first when I saw it, my knee jerk reaction, because I'm cynical, is like, oh, that's lazy. Like,
Yeah.
and honestly, it honestly could be. There is a non-0% chance that someone took a look at how long it would take to do like a Betelgeuse's arc with all of the seven deadly sins and was like, that's too long. What if we just have all of them see him now? there is
Right.
there's a non-0% chance that happens.
Right.
I'm not going to say it did because I do have respect for the show, and I think that they're better than that. But I think that certainly came to mind. I'm sure at one point, like, hey, we can't do this for everyone.
We can revisit this a little more next time in the context of the power scaling, because it's a really crazy thing to do in terms of the power scaling of the universe, to take these all powerful entities and just bring them down to the level where Subaru can talk to them. Although admittedly they're kind of like ghosts because they're in the witch's graveyard or whatever, because Satella killed them 400 years ago. Of course, we still don't understand what the hell Satella is doing there anyway. But, setting that aside, I mean, we're still talking to these witches, these all-powerful beings that were hyped up for a long time. And so it's an interesting question of how it's going to handle the power scaling from then on. And I think it handles it pretty impressively, which we'll see in the later half of season 2. So we can revisit this topic then.
Yeah, power creep. As a Pokemon fan, I know this all too well.
Yeah, I have no idea how much power creep there actually is, though, because of course only 2 seasons have been animated. So
give me, because we're talking about power scaling. Are the witches evil?
So I think the main idea is, of course, that the witches are just their motivations are just pretty incomprehensible. Like when Echidna was giving her monologue in episode 13 about her contract, she was kind of spouting nonsense that doesn't make any sense to anyone except her. And I think the idea there is just that these witches are the pure incarnation of their respective sins, and Echidna's lust for knowledge and her greed in general is just so far beyond the pale that you always expect when someone has a motivation that there's something underlying it. If they're greedy because they need money or something, but Echidna's greedy for the sake of being greedy, and that comes off as very incomprehensible to the audience and also to Subaru, and that's of course a major reason why Subaru rejects the contract. And so Subaru has it in his head that these witches are evil. I think he's sort of decided that this incomprehensibility, this refusal to empathize with a human like him, is somehow evil in itself. I was thinking this sort of mirrors Subaru's realization that he needs to empathize with Emilia in season 1. I think he's realized that sort of empathy is important to him, and therefore the witch's refusal to be empathetic in the same way, to not be selfish, not have selfish aims for the sake of selfish aims, is evil. I think that's something that he's decided as part of his character arc. What do you think?
Well, because you asked 2 questions. Are the witches evil, and does Subaru think the witches are evil? Does Subaru think the witches are evil has both a very simple and complex answer, because you'll notice that it seems like Subaru just decides that everything he sees he's going to save, which kind of speaks to that thing that we opened this episode talking about, which is that, Subaru will just shoulder any responsibility he sees.
Right.
Like the first time he sees Satella, he's like, no, I'll save you. The second time he sees Satella, he's like, F you, I hate you.
Yeah.
The first time he sees Echidna, he's like, you're a friend to me. I like you. And like the last time he sees Echidna, in sort of this like first half of season 2, he's like, you're a psychopath.
Yeah.
So he very clearly thinks that they're evil. That said, whether or not he will act that way, and then we say, actions speak louder than words, maybe why is he saying that? Is he saying that because he truly believes it? That's all a little bit more ephemeral. But he will certainly say, if we were to ask Subaru right now, pull him out from the screen like a little homunculus and say, are the witches evil? He'd be like, oh, hell yeah. Are the witches evil? Evil depends on whether or not you think that in order to be evil, you have to have knowledge and conception of the human condition.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And now you could argue, well, they're witches of sin, the seven deadly sins, no less, and that those are all based on vices, and so they're all steeped in the human condition, and so therefore they do have knowledge of the human condition. But I'm not sure. I mean, they all seem to not really understand what it means to be human, at least genuinely. Some of them will empathize with humans, but for other
Yeah,
reasons, not because they understand the human condition.
I think this goes back to that idea of not having motivations that underlie their sinfulness. Like a normal human would have a motivation that a rationale that explains why they commit a sin, whereas they're so purely sinful. Maybe the reason that they're evil is because they refuse to be human in general. The fact that they willingly commit their respective sins without any motivation is the what makes them inhuman, and therefore what makes them evil. I think that they're not aware of the human condition because they don't have these motivations, and they don't understand that there should be motivations behind their sins in the human condition.
So they are. I'm sorry, they are or aren't evil.
Well, I guess if understanding having a conception of the human condition is a prerequisite for being good or evil, then they would be neither. If that's what you're saying.
They are neither good nor evil.
Yeah, they're kind of amoral. Like they exist outside moral structures because they've completely abandoned their humanity altogether. But of course, if you are Subaru, then enforcing your human perspective onto them is it's paramount.
Well, what I'm thinking is I can't remember the quote, but it's Baruch Spinoza on evil.
Mm-hmm.
And he says something like our conceptions of good and evil are just affects of joy and sorrow. That we do not conceive of good, nor do we conceive of evil. We merely conceive of the acts which make us good and the acts which make us sorrowful. And so through that framework, where the witches really can't have joy or sorrow, they aren't evil. But that begs the question, do the witches feel?
Well, by the way,
I know that Echidna has some type of feeling. If you know,
does she have some kind of feeling? You know, during while we were watching, you kept saying, "What does he have that I don't?" Every time Echidna would flirt with Subaru.
Yeah, I've. Oh, well, continue.
But you know, the reason. Do you have a theory for why she flirts with Subaru?
Yeah, I think that the reason why she flirts with Subaru is because she is greed, and so because other people want him, she must have him, and so the fact that Envy wants him, and that he is after Rem, and that he is after Emilia, like, she is greedy, and so she must have this force, and so that's why she wants him.
Right. I mean, she's trying to be manipulative. Like she's flirting around Subaru because she thinks that's what Subaru, you know, that's what would turn Subaru on to her. You know, she just generally acts kind of strange and kind of unnatural around him. You know, she doesn't act in a very natural way around him, and that's because she doesn't really know how a human is supposed to act. She's just doing what she thinks is optimal for her to like maximize her chances at getting Subaru to agree to a contract with her.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's funny because if a human were to do that, we'd say that they're evil. You know, the issue that I have with conversations about utilitarianism, and this goes all the way back to our initial Erotica Magica episode.
Yeah.
Is that when a human is a ruthless utilitarian, we call them, a fascist, or like that is evil because humans have knowledge of the human condition. So that's sort of something that I feel like sort of we both understand, but needs to be said in this conversation, which is that the only reason why Echidna's sort of manipulation here is not evil is because Echidna is not a human. Roswal is evil. Roswaal is I don't know what a humanoid creature. Like he's a thing.
Kid is a humanoid creature.
Okay, but Echidna's like a witch.
Which is our subhuman.
Yes.
Emilia subhuman.
Very true. You should have seen the absolute vile stuff I was throwing at her in the chat.
Very true. Very true.
I'm not sure what possessed me to do that. I apologize.
This is so true. We are going to post the DMs. Release the DMs.
Witch, bitch, vile witch, hiss.
I remember. Aware.
No, like Roswaal being like killing Subaru over and over until he does the things that he wants and sicking assassins on the mansion to strengthen him is evil. Echidna doing that would not be evil because Roswaal understands the human condition. Maybe. I don't know. The human condition is understanding death, ultimately. Does Roswaal understand death? Does Subaru understand death? Is Subaru evil? Don't answer that question.
Well, we'll get more answers in the second half of season 2, I guess.
I am based.
Okay, yeah. So Echidna and Roswaal are both clearly manipulative towards Subaru, and I only want to mention this briefly. I don't want to talk about it too long because people have already said it. But there's sort of a very common interpretation of this, where Roswaal and Echidna are foils to Subaru's parents. Because in episode 4, you saw him go revisit his parents, and of course he had this complex with his dad of never living up to people's expectations for him, and then he left with his dad saying, "You can grow up to be whoever you want," and you left with his mom saying, I forget what she said, something.
Be half your dad and half yourself, and you'll be great.
Yeah. They said stuff like that, and then Echidna and Roswaal just, Roswaal wants. Subaru has said explicitly that he wants Subaru to be exactly like him, and he's going to force Subaru to be exactly like him. And Echidna is trying to manipulate him into doing whatever she wants him to do. And part of overcoming Echidna and Roswaal's schemes has been the journey that he took with his parents at the beginning of the season, and I think that's a pretty cool thing. So in episode 8. I consider season 2, episode 8 to be my favorite episode. I think pretty much all of ReZero's episodes are great, and there are a lot of close contenders, like episode 15 of season 1. Do you remember that one? The one where he falls in the snow, and then there's red credits.
I think so. Can you give me like one other plot point that happened there? Because
it's where he met Beetlejuice in the cave, and Rem died. Rem death number 3. That's a fan favorite, and it's one of my favorites too. It's just a great moment, a very emotional moment. I think season 2, episode 8, that one scene at the end where he says he can return by death, is really set apart in my mind from other parts in the series. So when I first watched this episode, my experience with the scene was like the definition of catharsis. Like, I had never up to that point had an experience with any piece of media where I really felt like a weight was being lifted off my shoulders, like all of the burdens that I had been carrying with the protagonist were just like so purely cleansed in one moment. Because what happens in the scene is Subaru, who has been completely alone in this journey, as you said, he's the one who's had to initiate every single relationship so far. He doesn't really feel like he has any friends. And then every time he tries to explain to someone what he's been going through, what his honest feelings are about the situation, he's stopped by Satella, and at one point just ends up killing Emilia because he tries to explain it to her. This is part of what resulted in the dramatic Emilia leaving him in episode 12. Was he couldn't explain himself to her, and she just said, I don't understand what you're talking about, and just left, because no one can really understand what he's going through. And so, surrounded by the problems at the mansion, having to get through the trial, not being able to trust Garfield or Ryuzu, or 38 as you call her, not being able to confide in anyone, and not being able to trust Emilia to do the trials on her own, not sure if he can trust Roswell or Beatrice, confronted, and then there's the problem of the snow, the problem of the witches, confronted with just on all corners, completely cornered, and completely alone through his entire journey. He finds this one, the one solace in the entire universe, and that is Echidna, someone he can finally just explain what's going on to, someone he can finally confide in, someone he can finally trust. And so that catharsis is what finally breaks his loneliness. It's what finally makes him feel like he has someone who's got his back. For once in his life, he feels like there's someone who understands him. And I just felt like all in one moment, finding that one person after so long, I thought it was a really amazing scene for that reason.
I don't think Echidna understands. I don't think she can understand. I agree that it is a cathartic scene. But frankly, with Echidna's relentless thirst for knowledge, I'm sure that she would consider Return by Death to be a boon, if anything.
This happens before all the contract shit goes down, though. This is sort of when his relationship with Echidna is just starting.
Although, I don't know. I think that there were still some hints that Echidna wasn't like a perfect person. That she still had.
So what was your experience with the scene? Narrate your experience with the scene.
I saw it and I understood the gravity of it, and I understood that it was a meaningful character moment. But I didn't feel that Subaru's condition had necessarily changed. I don't think that he now had a person to confide in, because I sort of had the suspicion that Echidna wasn't really a true friend. And so I think Subaru, this was a moment where it is sort of confirmed that, Subaru's loneliness about his experiences weighs upon him, that he has been using this heroic facade and this thing this chess master facade to mask the fact that it's messing with him so much, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't necessarily think that his loneliness was assuaged. I don't think that his relationship to Return by Death isn't changed. It is in a couple of later episodes, but not necessarily just in this moment. I mean, frankly, if anything, the fact that the one person he can trust also, is a complete weirdo, is sobering, if anything. So it did not feel like a catharsis to me. It was a chiefly
Really?
important moment, but I didn't really feel cathartic for that reason. That I didn't really think that this was going to change much for Subaru, and it really hasn't. Other than reaffirming, I guess, his humanity, maybe. I mean, that is very important. But in terms of his loneliness, nothing really changed in my view.
I mean, he still gained someone he could confide in, regardless of how trustworthy they were in the end. The point was that in that moment, just in that moment, he felt, like he wasn't alone.
Yes, I guess I'm saying it's fleeting, and I knew that it was sort of it was a little hollow, because even then, there's no way that Echidna could understand. Not that you have to understand to confide in someone, but they have to at least be able to conceive of what you're talking about. And I didn't feel like Echidna could do that, so this didn't really feel like someone who Subaru could trust. It felt like a moment for him, but it wasn't a moment for her. It wasn't a moment for them. And so because of that, it felt more like a step on Subaru's journey than a moment of catharsis.
Okay, so I'm curious, what has been your favorite scene so far? Since we're talking about our favorite scenes,
what has been my favorite scene so far? I would say that my favorite scene is, and I mean, there's a couple of them. So I'm gonna say the final of this sort of type of scene, but the scenes with Subaru and Roswell in whatever cabin or room that he's staying,
mm-hmm.
where Subaru sort of slowly comes to realize that Roswell is the antagonist, or one of the antagonists. I think the one in what is it, episode 13, where he says that he hired Elsa, uh, was my favorite scene, just because it had like, I don't know, it was such a good twist in the sense that like it didn't give you whiplash. You kind of knew it was coming, but it was executed so well where you're like, you know that Roswell's behind this, but you're like, why is he doing this? And you know that he knows something, but you're like, but how much does he know? And like in a very short, efficient scene, his views on Return by Death are articulated, and his knowledge of them is articulated in a really good way, and in a way that really makes sense for his character, that he's like disappointed in Subaru. You know, his utilitarianism and political views
Or said utilitarianism.
are kind of extrapolated.
True.
And then at the end, we have that scene where Otto slaps him, which I think is just a fantastic way to end it, because that to me made me feel like, hey, this is different, because Subaru's had so many of these types of interactions where like a person who he had known, he realizes now is evil and wants to kill him, and he always just turns his shoulder and runs away. And before, not in fear, but like, and does it by himself before he can even fully process that and resolve to do that. Otto slaps the shit out of him. And so that's why that was sort of my favorite. I guess that's two scenes, but that was my favorite scene of the. We only watched up to episode
13.
Yes. Okay.
Was that the scene where he killed Rom?
Yes.
Yeah. The killing Rom part is the part that I guess resonates stronger for me, because Rom
because I hate Rom.
Because Rom has talked all season about how she trusts Roswell, and we saw her in season 1 too. She's kind of like Roswell's teacher's pet, and to see that trust suddenly betrayed to the extent that Roswell would kill her just to make Subaru cooperate with him.
Yeah,
is pretty harrowing.
That was a good that was like in the mafia movie where there has to be the scene where he means business, so the Don just kills one of his men.
Yeah,
and
it's his closest man too.
What'd you say?
His closest man too.
Yeah, no, where like they're all sitting at the table. He's like, they're like, Don Geppetto, we gotta do the thing, and he goes like, bang, and shoots the guy. And he's like,
it's similar. It's a similar idea in the reveal that he sent Elsa to the mansion, because that he sent her to kill Beatrice, who we thought Roswell and Beatrice had kind of a close relationship. But we also did know that Roswell is willing to kill Beatrice in a time of crisis, because of that scene that you complained about in season 1. Where he actually does try to kill Beatrice when she's protecting Subaru when Rem dies.
Well, and speaking of me complaining about season 1, that's also part of the reason why I liked this scene, was because I had been skeptical of how they were going to deal with the Bowel Hunter, because the fact that she was like such an antagonist and then just kind of disappeared, and I was like, where did the Bowel Hunter go? What the hell? And then the Bowel Hunter's back, and she's like, I've been hired to kill you, and I'm like, okay, so how are they gonna like I for some reason, O ye of little faith assumed that the way that she was going to be tied back into the story was not going to be good, and so I did not expect for it to be Roswell, and I was kind of impressed with that tie-in, and so that was bolstered by like, hey, like, okay, I was not, you exceeded my expectations, and so that also bumped my opinion up with that scene a little bit.
Yeah. It is very cool how so many things got tied together there, and things will continue to get tied together.
It's very very Lasso-esque way to tie everything together.
It's kind of.
I'm getting big Ted Lasso vibes from this show.
I know, kind of Monogatari-esque.
Man who has only ever seen ReZero. I'm getting big ReZero. I need to. I made that same joke in the Ted Lasso episode.
Did you?
Yeah, I made the exact same joke where I said, man who has only ever seen Monogatari. I'm getting big Monogatari vibes from this.
Very
To be
true.
fair, I said, what does Ted Lasso remind you of? And you said it reminds me of Monogatari.
I guess it reminds you of ReZero. I said Ted Zero.
Ted Zero.
Ted Lasso is the first ReZero type Western show.
This is a very Strand type show.
Yeah.
ReZero is the first Western type anime.
That's AOT.
Do you think Gen 10 in Pokemon is going to introduce the Western type?
They already have that. It's fairy type.
What would the Western type be weak to? You know what the Eastern type would be weak to? Guns, germs, and steel.
I don't think you can say that anymore.
That was so genuine. I don't think you can say that anymore.
In conclusion, in summation,
In summa, why does Subaru keep going?
Subaru keeps going because he has decided that he is right. It's actually virtue theory propaganda. He's decided that he is right. He has decided what virtue means to him, and so he's going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I take a slightly different approach to it, where I think that, like, at this point, he's in too deep.
Isn't that where virtue theory is?
Yeah, no, I would say like sunk cost fallacy. Like, bro, he's just like, he's here.
Isn't he? Oh, you don't know yet. I was gonna say, isn't he a bit like Rosewall? Isn't he a bit insane?
Yeah, well, no, that's what I said. I was saying like, you know, if death is the ultimate human condition, and Subaru doesn't know death, is Subaru evil? There is our that's our highlight for the, that's our clickbait highlight for the beginning. Let's go.
I mean, I think he knows death because he saw the consequences of his deaths in the trial, and
yeah, so
he
no
also
longer
has experienced mostly permanent losses with Rem being asleep for God knows how long.
yeah, no, I mean that's all bullshit, but it's clickbait. So, no, like he has no way out.
Yeah.
So I mean, when you take away the flight instinct, when you take away any conception of leaving, you're not left with the ability to leave. I mean, hell, that's where Subaru's bravery comes from. You know, I think that's why he doesn't maybe consider himself brave, is because he doesn't think he's brave, but he's acting like a man with you know, man's got no alternatives, and that's always gonna come off as bravery if you can make it work and you don't seem desperate. So what's left in ReZero? We're up to episode 13, so we got episodes 14 through
25.
25. All right.
My other favorite moment is in episode 24. We can also talk about that if you want.
Can't wait. All right. Well, then look forward to ReZero episode 5 in 2 months.
Episode 4.
This is episode 4.
This is episode 3.
This is episode 3?
Hmm?
Damn.